Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Writing to Win. My name is Mallory Price, and I will monitor today's session. We had lots of interest in this topic, and we are so excited to have you join us. And also, thank you for all of the questions you submitted beforehand. They have really helped us to shape this webinar into what it is. If you have any questions during the webinar, we would love to have you type them into the Questions tab on your control panel, and we will get to as many as we can. Joining me today are Tamara Buckman from our Virginia region, who has over 12 years experience in proposal development. Kelson Forsgren will also be here moderating with me and managing the slide deck, and he has managed our major proposal programs. Jeff Novak is one of our senior trainers who provides proposal writing and management workshops across the world. And Lisa Puckrin, one of our senior proposal managers and writers working on a major client proposal initiative. So thank you all of our panelists for joining us today. We're excited to have you with us. And without further ado, I will turn the mic over to Kelson.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're glad you're taking a little bit of your time today to join us on this Writing to Win webinar. I'm excited as well to have our additional panelists here. You'll hear from them more extensively throughout our webinar. So a little bit about our agenda here. We're going to talk a little bit about high cost of poor writing, some pre-writing guidelines, some things that can help with writing to win. And we've grouped things based on some of your questions. So we'll address those buckets as they were a little bit here in the future as we talk through best practices and things that can help us with winning. We also at the end have a Writing to Win checklist, some items that you can include in a checklist of sorts to help you check to see if you're doing best practices with your writing. And then we'll wrap up the webinar with additional questions that you may have that we can get to. So I want you to, starting out here, think about this. Josh Burnoff wrote an article about the cost of poor business writing. Bad writing costs businesses billions. It's costing American businesses close to $400 billion every year. That's a staggering number. So think of this. You start your day wading through first draft emails from colleagues who fail to come to the point. You consume reports that don't make clear what's happening or what your management should do about it. We have websites, marketing materials, and even proposals then, press releases from suppliers that are filled with jargon and meaningless superlatives. Everybody beating their chest and saying, we're the best, and yet there's no justification or no getting to the point about what we should be doing, what we need to do. Another writer, Kara Blackburn, you can see her credentials there, is quoted saying, you can have all the great ideas in the world, and if you can't communicate, nobody will hear them. Jeff, you had an additional one you wanted to add.
Yeah, so you have to understand my background is as a professional musician, and I said Louis Armstrong, the great jazz trumpet player, used to say, what's the sense of having music in your mind if you can't get it past your pucker?
Awesome. Okay, so what kinds of things lead then to poor proposal writing? A couple of things that are going to come up on the screen here are some highlights for that. Poor pre-writing and planning, activities that happen before we actually begin writing. What if we have some poor win strategy in going forward, and we have some things that cause us to start and stop and start again? What about problems with our solution? If we're not sure what it is and we get towards the end in the proposal writing process, the solution is changing, it just causes problems for us to create a coherent and cohesive message. We may have people participating in writing that aren't very good at doing writing and haven't received good training or don't have skills to demonstrate that. The big one, of course, is all about us. When we are talking about what we can do, we all the way home, that's where we'll be. We'll be home, not doing the work, because we're not identifying how we can communicate with the customer and help them understand how we benefit them, how they benefit from our work. Also, if there's lack of discipline in process or not doing good reviews, that can contribute to poor proposal writing. And sometimes we experience this, that there are a lot of people saying how things should be done and disparate directions that cause problems with the actual writing of a proposal. So there are these practices and habits and process flaws that can cause problems. So really one of the things that we need to do kind of as a start for everything, as a basis for going forward for writing, is to use some best practices before we actually write. Before we write, we include planning. You can see what's on there, understanding the opportunity and the win strategy and what your discriminators are. We'll talk about some of those things in this session today. Organize. How is planning different from organizing? Well, you've collected information first as part of your plan, and now you're using structure, something that the customer has given you, or other guidance documents to put it into a response mechanism or a template of some sorts. So you do those things in planning and organizing before you get to the writing. And as we're doing writing, we need to make sure we're clear, concise, and correct. Following that, we do examination or have reviews and things like that that help us understand how we could improve. So it's not just in our head, but other people are reviewing things as well and helping us understand how to improve. And then we have the opportunity to revise our writing and to improve readability and compliance and being compelling and responsive to our customer. So, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to touch on this later or not, but the examine, everybody will notice, is a lowercase e. Everything else is uppercase. And that's because examine should be done by people who are outside of the proposal writing effort. So you have fresh eyes looking at your material to examine it.
Indeed. That is the reason for the lowercase e. You have to let go of it and go out into the world and be socialized and then come back. Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you. So with what we have done with this webinar is we took a slightly different approach. We received lots of questions, as Mallory said before, that you submitted with registration. We put most of these questions into a few categories. So we tried to shape the webinar then around these topics. So then we've augmented answers to your questions then with additional best practices on writing to win. So the top 5 ones here are the ones that we have grouped things into, and you'll see with each of those some of the questions that were submitted that we'll be addressing as well. So we'll start with benefits focused writing, go to win strategy, go to customer focus. Then in the 4th one, we'll be talking about being concise and clear, how we can do some things to improve readability. Then we'll end with writing win themes, and then we may have time for addressing some other topics beyond that. So thank you for your questions and what you submitted. So first off, we'll start with benefits focused writing. So if the evaluator that's reviewing your proposal can't find a benefit, and the benefit means it has to be of value to them, then what you're selling, they're not going to make a choice and select you. If there's nothing that they can find of value, why should they select you? So I've asked Jeff to start us out here in addressing some of the questions that we have here with regard to benefits-focused writing. So what's the most efficient way to prove your point when page limits are restrictive?
Great. Several ways of doing that. First of all, proposal writing is very different from the way we write normally. It's a technique that needs to be learned. The main thing is that in scientific writing, which is the way we've been taught, we start off with the details and work our way to a main point. In proposal writing, we start with the main points first. And that's not just at the top of the page, that's at every paragraph, the main point. The concept is Larry Newman, who wrote the proposal guide, the capture guide, the business development guide, all these guides. He's an expert in this stuff. And his comment is that I do not want the evaluator to read my entire proposal. So what we're going to do is try to find ways of making compelling justification jump out of the page. So some other things you can do to get your point across in a short page count is to use call-out boxes or focus boxes. A focus box is a little bit different variation of a call-out box. You basically have a factual statement in the top half of the box, and in the second half of the box you have bullets that are proof statements that support the fact that you're telling them. And that fact should be that compelling justification you want them to be able to use. Other things you can use are graphics with well-written action captions, and each action caption should have a benefit linked to a feature. And the other thing, and Kelson mentioned, is it's very easy to mask your benefits. Now, bear in mind that the government or the customer, whether it's commercial or federal government, they do not want to buy features. They want to buy the benefits. So it's easy to miss those benefits in the writing. So when you're done writing, you need to have that examining where someone else comes in and asks them, can you read this and tell me what you feel the benefits are? Because oftentimes they're not found. So the main thing is put the main points first, emphasize the benefits of your solution, use call-out boxes, focus boxes, and graphics on the page.
Great highlight and summary of some powerful ways to do that with limited page count. Okay, how do you turn company-focused mission statements and value propositions into customer-focused messages to win business?
This actually starts in the capture phase, and if you don't do capture, I encourage you to do so. It's a very strategic and necessary part of writing a good proposal. But in that capture phase, getting to understand your customer, understanding their issues, you need to align your mission statement and value propositions with the customer's strategic objective. So you have to understand what their objective. Now, their objective might say, well, we're going to buy 500,000 widgets, but they're going to use those widgets for something. And then they have a long-term objective for the use of those widgets. So they may have a long-term vision of how they're going to be purchasing these things in the future. Understand that strategic objective and then align your mission statement and value proposition to their objective. Take ownership of that objective.
Great, yeah. The problem with the company-focused stuff is that's all the we.
Absolutely.
And we need to get to, I guess, you.
Right.
For the customer. Okay, a third question here. How do you gain the customer's attention when you are coming into the game at the last minute?
Yeah, I said if the RFP is on the street, you really have an uphill climb. It's not impossible, but it's an uphill climb. So some things you have to consider. Do you know the customer's major issues, those hot button issues? Generally, you learn those during the capture phase. But in a federal proposal as well as commercial proposals, you can usually glean those out of the proposal as to what those issues are. In a federal proposal, I would tell you to read the statement of work. I would tell you to read the section L, the requirements section, and understand what those main hot button issues are. Also, going back to that strategic objective, do you know what that long-term objective is? Because that will help you when you're coming in late to the game. Here's some things you can do. One, identify what your discriminators are. Kelson, we're going to go over that a little more in this class, and understand that not every proposal is chock full of discriminators. Sometimes you're lucky if you can find one or two. So also identify your benefits of your offer. So if you don't have specific discriminators, go to your benefits that you're offering to the customer. Sun Tzu, the Chinese philosopher warrior, said, know your enemy and know yourself, and in 100 battles, you will never be in peril. But then he went on to say, if you know yourself and you don't know your enemy, in every battle, you have an equal chance of winning or losing. And then he said, if you don't know yourself and you don't know your enemy, take a Shipley course. Well, actually, he just said you have no chance. So if you have a short-term thing and you don't know what's going on with your competition, that's going to hurt you. So you have to know something about your competitors. Here's the deal on competitive intelligence and why it's so important. When you write your proposal and it goes to an evaluator, they have to have some mechanism of distinguishing your proposal from the others. that competitive intelligence and that ability to ghost your competition gives them the opportunity to see how your proposal stands out against the others.
Okay, great, thank you. So there's another little graphic that kind of that showcases what Jeff has talked about how much benefits are of value over cost in particular. I mean, sometimes you get situations where the customer says that cost is the almighty controlling factor. Anything dealing though with value, with value trade-offs or things like that a customer may be talking about, they're more focused on what they will get out of it rather than just a cost. So there's a book that came in the past called Made to Stick by brothers Chip Heath and Dan Heath. So with regard to writing, there's some things that they bring up that are valuable in this as well. What makes our writing stick? They talk about for an idea to endure, we must generate interest and curiosity. Interest, especially in proposals, to make sure that we're leading the evaluator to what they want to see or what they need to see from our solution. Naturally, sticky ideas are full of concrete images because our brains are wired to remember that. Sticky ideas have to carry their own credentials. We need ways to help people test our idea for themselves, a try before you buy philosophy. In proposals, the way that we do that is typically showing, convincing the reader and convincing the evaluator that we have specific experience by talking about that experience, by having specific solutions, by showing where it has worked before, those types of things that can convince the evaluator before making a buy decision. A couple of other quotes from this book. News reporters are taught to start their stories with the most important information. So the lead contains the most essential element of the story, and then information is presented that way. That style is called the inverted pyramid. Most important information at the top, as Jeff talked about as well. And that is of great value to the reader because they see immediately up front and frequently up front what the value is to them. Our messages have to be compact because we can only, we learn and remember only so much information at once. So in our writing, as we're doing that, we put the most important information up front, we're succinct, we're clear, and customers often ask for that. They ask for, I don't want marketing material, I don't want fluff, I don't want this grandiose produced thing, I want answers to my questions, I want what the benefits are to me, I want to see how you are going to help me meet my challenges. So a little bit about some of the terms that Jeff had used before. Hot buttons are information that are a conglomeration of the things here. I'll put all of this up here for you so you can see what we're talking about. There's a broad scope of customer issues, things that they're worried about, things that keep them awake at night. As a subset of that, there are some other motivators that are objectives that they're trying to achieve. Hot buttons typically are a combination of things that are stated as motivators and sometimes unstated that are issues that may be worrying the customer. Combinations of those things then help us to address not only what might be on the page for what they need, but also what may be of issue of concern to them, to our customer as well. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I'll take the first question that came up. What if the government refuses to meet with you, even when the solicitation is still pre-RFP? That's an excellent question. FAR 15201 says that the government should engage with industry, and a smart program manager, a smart contracting officer is going to do that because they need to learn from industry what is reality, what is realism as far as the objective of the buy and also the cost of the buy. But here's the deal. In the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a huge turnover of contracting officers in the federal government. Newer contracting officers, a lot of them are young, and they've gotten burned. And what's happening is that a lot of them are now telling you they will not discuss anything with you. They want everything submitted in writing, and they answer questions to everybody, even though the RFP is not on the street. There's really not a lot you can do about that. It really just depends on what customer you're working with. And as I travel around the country, I find it's probably more about 60% of the contracting officers are willing to talk. There's about 40% of them that just shut down and will not say anything to you. You can push buttons. You can tell them that the FAR allows that. They might push back. You could go as far as getting local congressmen involved, but quite frankly, you're burning bridges if you go that route. So it's just it's part of the nature now of some of these younger contracting officers who've gotten burned on other solicitations.
Okay, thanks, Jeff, for answering that question. One of the other things that is important with identifying benefits for customers comes from the wording that they use. And if we have the opportunity, and should have the opportunity, and sorry about the person that had this problem with pre-RFP not talking to the customer, not being able to, we need to see if we can clarify with the customer what they mean by certain things. Otherwise, we're left guessing what they say versus what they mean. So for example, if our customer says that they want quality something or other, what do they mean? Are they talking about price? Are they talking about being reliable, safe, flexible? Lots of things that may go into that term, and as we can seek clarification with our customer regarding that, then we can make sure we're linking benefits of our solution to those types of things, what they mean by quality. So finding out those things beneath the surface. Okay, let's step into our second bucket about win strategy development. Writing must align with the win strategy. We must articulate the how in our message. How are we going to solve a problem? How are we going to save the customer money? How are we going to help them achieve things? We've asked Lisa to take a lead on this section here, and of the questions that we grouped into this topic, there are 6. So I'll put these up, and then Lisa can highlight which ones that she'll specifically address, because other ones will be addressed as we go forward a little bit here. So let me put up these questions. How do you develop strategies to concisely and effectively tell your company's story? How do you get out of, I'm sorry, do you want to talk to that, Lisa?
No, that's great. We'll talk to this one right here. Go ahead.
Okay. How do you get out of the weeds of constantly using standard database content?
So I really loved this question. I think this is really insightful because it's actually kind of a means to the end. So I think over time as a proposal manager, if you build your standard database content well and it's focused on the client, it has your features and benefits in there, you can then rely on it to free you up and use some of that standard content to enable a faster response so that you then can get out of the weeds and really focus on your strategic objectives, making sure that you're developing compelling win themes. So I really love this question because it actually is having really good standard database content that you can rely on can help free you up to focus on the strategic. So that was a great question.
Okay. What's the value of the executive summary? If it's so important, why isn't it scored?
This was another great question, and compliments to the person that asked it, because it actually got some good discussion from our panel going on it. So I think it's really the difference between tactical versus strategic. So when you think about questions that are scored, it's requirements, it's very tactical related questions in a lot of instances. And then the strategic summary, the executive summary is very focused on the strategic. It's kind of that intangible that executives are looking for. They have 10 minutes to read a response and they're at a C-level or they're at a major high-level decision maker, and They really want that, okay, I'm going to put my neck on the line for this program. Who do I feel like I can choose? So I think they're very different objectives. You usually have the actual executing program decision makers, looking at the scoring. Is this going to work on a day-to-day basis? And then the executive summary, you've got the high-level executives really looking at, making that strategic decision. So great question there too.
Agreed. Thank you. How do you get salespeople to collaborate more with proposal writers rather than writing their own copy?
So I love this question because it just happened to me yesterday. So I grew up in a farming community here in Utah, and it reminds me of kind of herding cattle, trying to keep people in line and trying to make sure that they're using their strengths in their own roles. So to me, this is all about trust. This is about building really good trust with your sales team, so that they can rely on you and will rely on you. And then sometimes you have to sell them too. You have to sell them just like you have to do a proposal and say, okay, you have to use words like, hey, I want to save you time. I want to make sure you can focus on your client-facing activities. So sometimes you have to throw in those features and benefits when you're selling a sales rep to let go of control sometimes too.
Yeah, good. And do you have a strategy? Do you have strategy suggestions for when team members insist on input that is not in line with winning writing practices?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, this happened yesterday. So we had a good strategy going for our introduction on an executive summary, and then we had a team come in and write like a 3-page introduction, and I just about passed out when I saw it. And I was like, okay, come on, this is why we gotta focus. We gotta get back in line here. So it is kind of herding cats at times, but it's my rationale to them was, all right, think about this. They literally are going to read this. You have a couple paragraphs to convince them. What would you say if you're walking into this meeting and you literally had 2 minutes to convince them? What would you say? And so kind of helping them get back focused. But it's definitely something we all face every day.
Yeah, agreed. Last one here on this list. What do I do to ensure the how isn't left out of a proposal, especially the technical approach?
So I think actually asking yourself as you're reading through, is the how there? That is also, these are great questions because these happened to me on this proposal I'm working on right now, and it was we were telling them a lot about what they were going to get, the outcome, which is, it's good we had the outcome in there, but we weren't telling them how we were going to get there. And so we had to get the technical team to beef that up and give more detail and support, because nobody likes fluff. Everybody needs to feel like it's a rational, attainable goal, and to see how we're going to get them there is really important.
Yeah, and sometimes it's asking, in a role of a writer, is sometimes asking questions of that technical team about the steps and what the benefits are of doing those steps and things like that, and even stepwise going through what the approach might be that could help them there.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes we just have to keep guiding them, prompting them.
Right. So that's one of the things that's a best practice with proposals overall. Focus, is it obvious why our offer is better than competitive offers? So Lisa's going to talk a little bit now as well about how strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, an assessment of that called SWOT, can help us develop strategy.
Yeah, I love the SWOT terminology because it makes me think of like military and campaigns and, planning your strategy, your attack. I think if you don't know knowing your weaknesses is as important as knowing your strengths. So your strengths are those positive discriminators. And I think those are maybe a little easier to identify at times. Weaknesses, the negative discriminators, sometimes we kind of have to pull that out of a team to help them realize where the challenges lay. I'm working on a proposal where we're defending existing business. And in that situation, it's really important to know those negative discriminators so you can mitigate against them. And then with your opportunities, that's your competitors' weaknesses, and the threats, the competitor strengths. So as you understand this, and we often, sometimes don't know the competition. We have strategies and ways to try to find out the competition. But when we don't know it, it's really about, putting forward that customer knowledge, those relationships, know what we do know, and emphasizing that to build out this. And it really helps us put forward a compelling response. So Kelson, I think you're going to go on and talk about discriminators for us.
Yeah, we'll highlight a little bit on discriminators and how they can help us as well in driving benefits, helping us understand. So if we have a context of the scope of our market or whatever they may be, within that space we have customer needs, we show our capabilities and competitor capabilities in this Venn diagram that overlaps. So as we're trying to look for discriminators, these things will help us, will guide us a little bit. The central part there is a neutral position. There may be discriminators there. It's something that the customer needs, it's something the competitor has, something we have. We want to make sure that we talk about that and address that. There may be something that we can highlight, possibly that we have that our competitor doesn't have. We want to make sure we address that there. An irrelevant position is something that customer doesn't need, but both our competitor and we have it. Let's not clutter the message or the proposal with something that does not matter to the customer, something they have not asked for. The top part on the right side here is our weakness. It's something that the customer needs, but our competitor has it better than we have it, or they have it and we don't have it. That's something that we need to address as part of our SWOT analysis. How do we mitigate that weakness? The sweet spot there on the bottom right then is where we can identify discriminators. It's something the customer needs that we have better than our competitors. And that could be experience, that could be people, that could be a host of things that are part of our solution as well, that we want to then highlight in our message to our customer how they benefit from what we do, and we do it better than others. So, all right. I had another question that came up from during the webinar here about our sales team is great at customer relationships, but not identifying hot buttons. Saw a lot of digging. Do you have any questions to ask to get gold for writing, to help them get information for writing? I don't think there's any silver bullet with that. Jeff, go ahead.
No, it's not a silver bullet. However, a lot of this has to do with how you plan your interaction with the customer and plan your questions or meetings. We teach a course, it's a Franklin Covey course, but we're certified to teach it, called Qualifying to Win. That course goes into great detail about how you frame the whole meeting with a customer and the questions that you ask to get responses you want. And there's a science to it. You have to have the end in mind when you talk to the customer. So you have to do some work to understand what that end in mind is and where you want the customer to meet you halfway. A lot of this has to do with collaboration. The other thing I tell my classes when I teach is that when you interact with your customer, when you walk in the door, keep your mouth closed and your ears open. Seek first to understand, then be understood, because a lot of times you will learn things from the customer that will help you shape those questions to get the gold that you need. But if you walk in the door, if you're interacting with a customer with a solution in your back pocket that you're trying to cram down their throat, you're not going to get that gold. Yeah. So two ways of going about it, I'd say, is learning how to manage that interaction with your customers through that qualifying to win. And the other thing is listening carefully to what their needs and objectives are, and then formulating your questions to get that goal.
Yeah, that's great. Great, thank you. Our third bucket today is about customer focus in our writing. So I've asked Tamara to kind of lead us through this discussion here. There are 5 questions that are we've grouped into this bucket from what came earlier, and here they are. How do we entice the customer and appear friendly?
This is an interesting question, especially the last part of it, that appear friendly piece. And naturally our proposal responses need to effectively communicate to the reader that, one, we understand their problem. Two, we have the best, most desirable solution to address their problem. And three, we want what's best for them. We empathize with their situation and their needs and their issues. So how do we do that? The response we provide to them should be personal, mainly focused on them, on the customer's needs, their preferences, as specifically as possible. Like Jeff said, really understanding what they need, not just proposing a solution because we have that solution. Again, back to making it personal. We understand that others in the industry and our competitors will have their own solutions that may be appealing to the customer, but our goal is to ultimately convince them that our solution is better and more likely to succeed through demonstrated past performance, customer satisfaction, quantifiable benefits that are results-oriented. And we find common values, again, back to that empathy. We talk their language, we use their terminology, and I think that will help to, continue to entice that reader, but also come off very friendly, very advantageous to the customer. Next question.
Okay. How do you ensure compliance while communicating customer focus?
To that, you develop a compliant and responsive proposal response. Obviously, compliance is key and paramount, as you can't make it through the next wicket without a compliant proposal. But in addressing those requirements, you want to describe exactly what you're going to do, but more to the how. How will you work as a team? Who will be the lead to ensure, that the tasks are being completed effectively? What mechanisms and tools will you use to ensure performance? How will you manage that? Channels of communications, reporting, involve government or customer representatives? And then what are the results that you will achieve by using this solution or using this approach? Again, and back to how that benefits the customer. What specific issues are you alleviating for the customer by taking this approach, by using this specific solution? And again, back to addressing those needs. Specifically state that this approach addresses X need, and if done previously, cite a recent success for a previous customer, or provide a commonly known term called a kudo, where you can pull a customer reference and specifically put that in a call-out box or focus box to yield confidence from the reader or the evaluator.
Great, thank you. Next question of the 5. This is the third of the 5. How do you stand out to an individual and not just blend in? How do you improve the content of your proposals?
Obviously, again, back to that compliant and responsive proposal, addressing those client issues and hot buttons. You want to make sure that you are offering a discriminating solution, again, that yields a better return and high quality return back to the customer. You want to be able to differentiate yourself from your competitors. So again, back to those results-oriented / proof points. Again, addressing those needs for the customers, any hot buttons that they, were able to provide to your capture staff. Again, it's really about, making sure your proposal really addresses the customer and not so much your capabilities, your solution, but how that solution and those capabilities really yield a better return for the customer's issues. How do you improve the content of your proposal? Write clearly. Reduce the ambiguity and any technically or overly complex writing. Jeff mentioned scientific writing is completely different than a proposal writing, and that's very accurate. Not everybody who is on the evaluation panel on the government side or on the industry side has the technical wherewithal some of our engineer staff or subject matter experts may have. So in keeping your writing concise, clear, and consistent, avoiding too many long and even dense sentences helps to reduce the difficulty for those readers. Naturally, we want to use active voice, which also helps to direct and keep that concise writing style. Also, using graphics and tables, call-out boxes where and when appropriate, helps to visually depict information that may be too cumbersome to read page after page. And provide success stories, proof points, where natural to infuse, again, that confidence back to the evaluator that this is the preferred solution to address all of their needs, all of their issues.
Great summary. How do you write unique lead sentences and cover letters, concise executive summaries, and translate complex information into infographics? That's a lot of questions in one. But
that's a lot.
you want to pick a couple of things out of there, and
I'll certainly do my best, because yeah, this was kind of a lot and maybe a little different for each one, but I think this is an opportunity, or probably the strongest opportunity for you to link those customer benefits to the features of your solution. Here you want to clearly and tangibly demonstrate to the customer that they'll receive X benefit by using your solution. So how do you do that? Well, you identify what that key benefit to the customer will be, coupled with that specific feature of your solution. Then you want to tie that benefit to the customer's issue or hot button. Again, specifically state what you're addressing, what problem you're addressing by providing this solution or this feature of said solution. And then quantify those benefits with verifiable proof points. Again, you want to persuade and emit confidence in the evaluator that the solution you're proposing has great success, has relevant success, and the only way to confidently persuade them is by giving them those metrics, those proof points, success stories where appropriate. So I hope that kind of helps. Again, it was a lot in one simple question.
right. And we actually will get to a little demonstration later in the webinar here that leads us through. We call them theme statements, but doing those things that Tamara just talked about. Even have an example for you. Okay, last one here. What methods are available to train technical staff and SMEs on proposal writing techniques? Subject matter experts. Take a shifting course. No, we shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I mean, well, whoever asked that question, or individuals who've asked that question, you've taken the first step, by participating in industry-sponsored webinars like this. Vendor-sponsored in-person training or online training, there is naturally the Shipley proposal guide, the Shipley capture guide. We ourselves have our own training, but what I'd like to encourage all of you is to not be afraid to develop your own in-house or your own writing guidance to the specific team or teams you're working with. The reason I suggest that is because you are working, you have the intimate knowledge and familiarity with the response that you are preparing. So, and you've worked with this team or the members of this team numerous times. So, we always get encouraged by having strategy sessions on technical or on management or key personnel. But never be afraid to say, I want to have a day dedicated to a writing strategy session, and go over what specifically you need from the team so they understand what responsive writing is, what persuasive writing is, how to write clearly with reduced ambiguity. We talked previously about powerful proposal writing, where we plan, we organize, we write, we examine, we revise. Explain to them the process that you are looking for and that it's an iterative process. You're not going to wake up on the first day and by day 4 you're going to have a goal team ready proposal response. It's an iterative process with multiple reviews, multiple revisions. Sometimes people are going to be working side by side with a peer through an interview process. Someone may not even have the capability or the wherewithal to do the proposal writing, but they have the information to share with an individual who does. Never be afraid to take the opportunity to put together your own thoughts on what you see is valuable for your own proposal. There are webinars like this one to help you understand kind of how to structure that writing, what you need from it. There is the Association for Proposal Management Professionals, otherwise known as APMP. They do a series of webinars as well. There's a ton of information readily available for you to develop your own in-house writing guidance to your own proposal team. So if you're, on the helm of taking over and jumping, off that ledge, this is an opportunity to do so and get exactly what you're looking for from your own team. Next.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara.
All right,
Go ahead.
Sorry. As I say, customer focus naturally starts with compliant. Again, getting back to a compliant response, you are merely just addressing the requirements in the most basic, truest form. You are within page count. You have you comply with the required font size, style, spacing. You've got the right table of contents, acronym list, all of that stuff. You are just simply responding to, at a bare minimum, we will comply with X requirement. How to take it to the next level, though, and make it responsive and compelling is really what drives that customer focus and what sets apart your response to that of your competitors. So in this slide, we demonstrate the vendor must provide 24/7 support. That's the requirement. At a bare minimum, we simply say that we provide that 24/7 support. How do you elevate that and take your response to the next level, making it compelling but concise and clear? In this example, we've elaborated and stated that the customer benefits from our 24/7 support at its 4 locations around the world in each language required, with a response time of 3 minutes or less. So we've demonstrated, 1, that we know they have multiple locations, that they have a variety of languages required to support their end users, and we've given them a quantifiable, tangible end result of 3 minutes or less. We may believe that through our interviews, through our due diligence, that their current response time may be 5 minutes. So by saying that we're giving them a 3-minute window or less, we're reducing their wait time. So we've given them a benefit, a tangible benefit, and increased our understanding and demonstrated empathy with them. I think, Kelson, that's it for me.
Thank you. We just want to pull up then quickly with regard to additional customer focus that there's some writing guidelines available to you. I can just pull these up quickly here. Tamara, do you want to mention anything about that emphasizes the points you've already discussed?
Sure. Again, this is very much the way to be customer focused is to focus on them. The industry trick and tip is to use the customer's name more than your own. Every paragraph should start with the customer. I think that may be in some cases too much depending on your volume, but it should be about the customer. How are you helping the customer? How are you, resolving their issues? Identifying what those hot buttons are, prioritizing them, not just throwing them out for the sake of throwing those hot buttons out, but understand the priority associated with those hot buttons. Customers have end users. Understand that those hot buttons may be addressable to other peers of theirs. Provide those proof statements, that are directly relatable to the customer's issues and hot buttons. Make sure that the benefits are before the feature. The customer received benefits are before your own solution features. Follow an organization. Keep that response customer focused. It's clear. It's easily identifiable from an evaluator's perspective exactly what they want to see in terms of the content, how you've structured it. And make sure your value proposition or theme statements are clearly identifiable, and again, tie back to those customer issues and hot buttons.
Great. Thanks, Tamara. Another item that might be of interest to you when we're talking about customer focus with how our proposals are, how our documents are designed to actually help facilitate customer focus as well. Have we put our proposal together so it looks professional and it makes it easy for the evaluator. So some things that might be of benefit for the document design, using headings, subheadings, theme statements. We'll talk a little bit about that in next here. Jeff talked about captions with graphics that help to tie a benefit with the purpose of the graphic, getting things through in a document design that make it easy for the reader to find information they need and to see the benefits for them. So another simple thing, not a simple thing in practice necessarily, but a simple thing to understand is that good page and document design also helps with our customer focus. Our fourth topic is about trimming the fat to improve readability. Customers just really want the essence of what the solution is. They don't want to read through a bunch of other junk that will obscure what we can do and what we can understand. A couple of the questions that were grouped into here: how do we frame groups of technical requirements without restating the requirement? Sometimes it's a matter of how you phrase your first sentence in your paragraph, that you tie that to this solution addresses this requirement and you get this benefit from it. Sometimes that's the way to do it rather than just restating the requirement. And it gives you more flexibility in your page space as well, because you remove that space for the restating part. That's one idea. What are best practices for writing customer-focused proposals, and how do we trim the fluff? We'll get to some of that a little bit later here. You've heard some other aspects about best practices for customer focus already. When writing technical proposals, are there any tips for keeping readability statistics below that of advanced education levels? Yeah, real quickly, things to look at doing. Again, some of the things that we'll also talk about in the next couple of slides address this. Looking at the words that you choose, looking at length of sentences, length of paragraphs. How much information are you trying to shove into text versus things that you can use graphics to help you describe better, and language that way. Go ahead, Jeff.
Actually, in your Word, if you use Word, you can set up a toggle on your Word that will do an analysis of the readability of your document. And in that case, it's based on the Flash-Kincaid level. But what it will tell you is that you have like a 65% readability or readability level. Your goal is to hit 70% or above. But you can toggle that on your Word document and have it assess it for you. The other thing is you got to know your customer, what the reading level is. Department of Defense is 9.5 is the average for department. However, the U.S. Army training manuals at a 6th grade level. So you have to know your customer, what level they're at.
And general rule of thumb is to try to target 8th grade or below.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you convince a subject matter expert that simple, concise language without jargon, technical overspeak is better in a written proposal? Well, that kind of goes back to some of the things that Lisa talked about, which is aspect of trust and being able to work with someone, help them understand that you're there to help them and to communicate better with the customer. Another way, Jeff?
I was just going to say, I just taught a course at NASA at Goddard Space Center 2 weeks ago to a bunch of literally rocket scientists who write with a lot of technical jargon and very difficult stuff. What they came out of that course was that the process of doing a proposal development worksheet or storyboard, going to then what we call the 4-box method, coming out with the writing, it actually was an epiphany for them about how to change their approach to writing with those subject matter experts to get more down to the point. They realized that the page constraint is so important. They only have maximum 15 pages for a technical proposal. So that process is what the answer is to convince the SMEs.
Yeah, that's great. And there's more to be found about that. And it is a matter of education as well, and working with that. So good questions there. Another thing that can help us a little bit is good graphics, using good visuals, making sure that they are clear and they connect to major selling points and are evidence as to why the customer should use us. A couple other things with regard to readability. Here's some things that we can do to simplify wordy phrases. Sometimes we see a lot of the stuff on the left side that is just continued overuse in technical areas or in business areas. Why don't we use simple language like what's on the right side? How about active voice versus passive voice? Something that is passive, like mistakes were made by Terry. Active voice would be Terry made some mistakes. Lisa, you have a comment about this as well, based on your experience.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially with analysts, with technical people, they have a tendency to write in a very passive voice. This mistake, or sorry, this example here, you know that Terry made a mistake. I often see the examples as it was discovered, it was it was uncovered, it was concluded. And I think the real shame, the real sad part of that is that we're not taking credit for great work we've done. So I think it's really important to use strong, confident, active voice where you have the subject at the start and you are making sure it's very clear and you're getting credit for the work that the company has done and making sure that they understand that the benefit that you're bringing to the table due to all of that analysis. So I think it's really important to be strong, confident, and otherwise your value gets diluted.
That's great. Great, thank you. Okay, we have a few minutes left. I wanted to jump to a little bit of information from the fifth bucket, writing good win themes. So a couple of questions that are part of that. Tips for writing win themes. Describe what a call to action goes in what call to action goes in a proposal cover letter. Won't specifically address that second half, but another question, what's the best way to address theme statements when there are unclear or weak discriminators? We'll talk a little bit about that in the context of a theme statement discussion here. Tamara's talked about this, Jeff has talked about this already, but how we can get good information up and early to our customer. Here's a simple success formula that I want to show you how we use. Here's a theme statement, for example, that includes a feature, or say we are the company called Vibrant. Here's a feature of our CRM system, Customer Relationship Management System. Here's a benefit that we're saying that our customer, Outdoor Sports Global, is going to receive. While this is okay as far as information, we can strengthen it by reworking it to put the benefit before the feature. Here's what we're starting with our customer. That's one of our 10 indicators of customer focus. Have them lead. We indicate a benefit that they will receive from our feature. So we started with customer, we went to benefit, and then feature. Let's make this stronger. Start with a customer. There's a benefit. There's our feature. And here's a quantified return. There's a number that actually draws the attention of the customer to say, wow, there's something that is actually measurable as part of what we're looking at. How about if we make it stronger further? We have a customer, and now we have not only just a benefit, but a quantified benefit. That's where we put the 35%. We have a time on that return. We have a feature, and we also have something of cost that we've identified. As we continue to get more specific in these areas, if we can, then that can improve the connection that we have with our customer and helping them solve their issues. What if we're able to add a discriminator? For example, in that example that we had with responsiveness that Tamara read before, we talked about support in the countries they needed with the language that they needed. If we have something like that up front in this theme statement, then that again is meeting a point that the customer needs to be able to make a decision because it's addressing what they've asked for. So a litmus test that we can use for a theme statement is trying to use it to help justify a high score. The evaluator can say, you know what, this concise statement that's placed at the beginning of this section is concise. The proof is in the rest of the section, but I can use this to validate why I'm giving this proposal a high score in this section. It takes some practice being able to do it successfully, but it is something that's a great practice to practice. How's that? A good best practice to use in making your information more compelling. So just quickly here, as far as a summary of our course, of our webinar today, here's some things that we need to make sure we're doing when we're writing to win. We want to substantiate, we want to focus on strengths, and we want to target benefits for our customers and have them understand how they will benefit, they will achieve what they need to with our solution. So just a quick checklist items here. You won't necessarily be able to use all of these unless you do a screenshot. Just some things that we've talked about that you can make some questions or a checklist to use as you review your documents and your proposals going forward with the target of helping you to win. So we invite you to continue participating in Shipley webinars in the future. Feel free to ask us additional questions, and we look forward to seeing you out there in the marketplace. Good luck to you. Hopefully your writing improves and your opportunities for win improve as well. There's a little bit about what's upcoming next year in the first quarter. 4 webinars coming up. Look for that information to come as well on our website at shipleywins.com. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time today. Thank you to our panelists, Tamara, Jeff, and Lisa, for participating. Have a great rest of the day, and happy holidays coming up.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, and you will see a copy of this presentation and the slides available on our website by tomorrow. So thank you, and have a wonderful day.